going to call this meeting to order. Stanislaus LAFCO, please rise for a pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will now go to the introduction of commissioners and staff. We'll start to my left. Amy?
Amy Bublak, city member.
Bill Berryhill, public member. It's been a while.
Jim DiMartini, county member.
Terry Withrow, county member.
Mike Van Winkle, city member.
Richard O'Brien, alternate city member.
Javier Camarena, Assistant Executive Officer.
Sarah Luddle-Penny, Executive Officer.
Alice Mims, LAFCO Council. Jennifer Vieira, Commission Clerk.
Brad Hahn, put out in the fan.
Ostracized.
Ostracized, what I was trying to say. Alternate public member.
There you go.
I think the staff is trying to tell you something, Brad.
Yeah.
Strong hint.
Okay. Okay, this is the time in our meeting for public comment. We have quite a crowd here tonight, so we're just going to take these one at a time. So
I do want to note, although we don't have public attendance, we did receive a number of emails regarding the informational items that we have on our agenda, the Modesto Urban Limit Line. So with your packet, you do have emails from Dale Crook, Alan Cover, Lonnie Turner, Leslie Doty, Linda and John Brugelli, Lisa Braden, Robin Braden-Hennings, Valerie Goldstein, Mary Brush, Christy Bergstedt, Vito Ruggiero, Denny Jackman, Vincent Luchessa, and the Honeycutts. We did also receive 2 additional emails right after we came downstairs here from Stephanie Bergstedt and Lena Aldridge, and I'll end up forwarding those to the Commissioner for their review. Those were all comments in regards to the urban limit line, and that is all we received for public comment so far.
So all these comments that we got tonight just came in? They were too late?
Yeah, after our agenda went out, and most of them within the last 24 hours.
Okay. Well, everybody keep in mind that when you do that, the commission doesn't have time to read them until after the meeting. So I always encourage people to send them in ahead of time so we have a chance to review them. But I will read each one of these. Okay, so I see no other public comment out there. So we will now move for approval of the minutes of April 22nd. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded that we approve the April 22nd minutes. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? Okay, motion's carried unanimously. We'll now move to correspondence. There is, I guess, a specific one from City of Modesto.
Right, so we have listed there the letter we received from Mayor Brandvold regarding the urban limit line. Also provided for you is the response letter that was submitted by LAFCO staff to the mayor and council. I do want to note, too, that the comments that we have received regarding the urban limit line and Wood Colony, because we don't have an application at this point, we will keep those comments on record. We're going to include all those commenters on any future notices that we have when a proposal comes to us. And I'll also be forwarding those comments that we received to Modesto in anticipation of any decision that they might be making in advance of ours.
And I guess you will comment on your response during your...
Yeah, I'll give a little update of what we know in my EO report at the end. And you also have in your packet there a memo from Cal LAFCO regarding board nominations for Cal LAFCO boards. That's another just a piece of information for the commission. And that's all.
Okay. When the time comes, I'd like to go over your letter to response. But I guess that'll come a little bit later in the meeting there, because I wasn't real happy with this letter from the city of Modesto. Okay, so now we will, a declaration of conflicts. Anybody have a conflict of interest? Okay, seeing none, we will move to agenda item 6, the consent calendar. Does anybody on this commission like to pull this item from the consent calendar for further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Make a
Motion approved.
Second?
Okay, motion's been made and approved. We approve the consent calendar. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion's carried. We will now move to agenda item 7, public hearings, the schedule of fees and deposit update.
Okay. So you'll recall at our last meeting, we had a discussion regarding budget, and at that time, Commissioner O'Brien had some questions about our fees and deposits, and we looked at the last time that we did an update, and we found that it was time to give the deposits a good update. So for tonight, we're going to be reviewing a few minor changes and one change regarding special districts, at least for the deposits. LAFCO has the authority to recover costs for applications. They cannot exceed the reasonable cost for providing the service. Our commission requires deposits, as is allowed, and then we have a policy where any unused amount gets refunded, if not expended. If we go over the deposit, we would then collect the difference. So what staff did was we went ahead and looked at the last 5 years of applications that we received. We looked at how many times we actually went over the deposit, which was in the majority of cases, and sort of the average cost for each one of those applications. So as a result of that, it's looking like we need to increase deposits for city and district boundary changes. Those are your typical annexation applications. Those are each going up by $500. Those reflect the actual costs for staff time and materials and postage, things like that. We also made a clarification. We were reviewing the section of our deposits and fees regarding district applications. We noticed that county service areas were called out as a separate deposit, and that was not aligning with the actual cost for county service areas. So what we were doing is matching those with any other district application. It makes the fee schedule a little bit more clear. We also noted that the deposit amount for a formation of a special district was actually much lower than it should have been. It ended up being lower than what it would cost to annex into a special district. So there's a lot of work in forming a special district. There's a lot of background research and things that need to be done with that. So we put that amount more in line to what it would cost for something where you would have an annexation and a sphere of influence. So those deposits are now more in line, more accurate. We did also add a little clarification just to the beginning of the fee and deposit schedule that clarifies that when you have an application, when you come in for, say, an annexation and a sphere amendment at the same time, we need to collect deposits for both of those. So that just ensures that we're actually collecting the amount that reflects the amount of work that we're doing right up front. And we did some minor updates to the sections just regarding being able to get digital copies of documents. We don't have to go pull things from the archives as was referenced in the old fee schedule. Everything is pretty much scanned right now, so we don't need to be charging for that. So staff recommendation is just to accept and adopt the updated schedule of fees and deposits, and that would be made effective as of July 1st. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay, any questions for staff? As I take it that we're just recovering our costs there, considering the rather thin budget of LAFCO, we just really do have to recover our costs. So we just barely scrape by, on our budget. It's very, very meager. So, I'm going to support this because there's no way we can absorb costs and lose money on applications. Any other comments?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's great you went back over 5 years, looked at actual costs, and came up with a number based on that, so we're not really guessing here. We know what's happened the last 5 years. So anyway, good job in putting this together.
Yeah. And thank you to Commissioner O'Brien
I
for
appreciate
suggesting it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, if you went back over 5 years, I think you've done your homework. Any other comments or questions on this item?
Make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Okay, motion's been made to adopt the resolution. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously.
I would just note, too, that there was no public comment that we received for that item.
Yeah. Actually, the changes were rather modest, really. So, okay, I'm glad we're all in such agreement tonight. Okay, we will move to agenda item 8, the city spheres and influence report. This is just the informational item, or I don't see anything to vote on this, but it's a very good report. I mean, it really is detailed on every city. I did really like looking at it.
Yeah, we wanted to highlight this one. It's just for the commission to receive. There won't be an action related to it, but it's one that we do every 5 years or so I'll let Javi talk about it.
Yeah, like just as Sarah said, this is just an informational item on the Spheres of Influence report. Just wanted to give the commission some highlights of what that report entailed. Give me a second. It's showing on the computer that it's not a slideshow. I'm having a little technical difficulties. Give me 1 second.
And you'll note we actually gave you color maps.
Impressive. Great.
Let me try to close it and open it back up.
There we go.
There we go. So yeah, this is just an informational item. Staff, we're continuously updating our maps and our data, and just wanted to share with the commission some of that information. The previous Spheres of Influence report was completed in 2015, so 5 years later, this is where we're at with some of the numbers as far as Spheres of Influence and ag land, which we'll get into in the next couple slides. But this first slide shows the current acreage of this first column here is the spheres of influence for each city, along with the city, the acreage of each jurisdiction. The second column is the acreage of the actual city, and the third column is the amount of acreage that is within the sphere of influence for each city, but not actually within the city limits. So I highlighted here in red since 2015 the increase of spheres of influence. So you can see Oakdale added 82, Riverbank over 1,400 acres. That was that Crossroads West project that we brought in last year, and Turlock, the Northwest Triangle, with their 22 acres there. So staff uses Department of Conservation information, specifically the Farmland Mapping and Monitoring Program. Different types of farmland, as many of you are aware, are categorized into several different categories. LAFCO defines important farmland as these top three soils you see here and highlighted, which are prime farmland, farmland of statewide importance, and unique farmland. So the next slide gives you some more detailed information for each city. So in these first three, on this table up top, these first three columns show that information that we showed you previously with the spheres of influence. And now these next four columns show the amount of acres within the spheres of influence as far as prime farmland of statewide importance and unique farmland. So this kind of gives you the totals of the farmland that's within the spheres of influence. And this table here at the bottom is for all the farmland outside of the spheres of influence. So you see statewide importance, unique, farmland and prime farmland over here. So just wanted to share that information with you. And last, this is the this information is the acreage outside of the spheres of influence. So as you can see, prime farmland, I have over 221,000 acres of prime farmland still. Farmland of statewide importance, a little over 30,000, and unique farmland, 110,000. Towards the hills, you see this is more grazing land, and that's not counted within that important farmland. So you see most of the important farmland is located on the valley floor. So we just wanted to share that information with you. That information's all in the report. There's individual maps for each city as well, as far as the spheres and farmland. So that's basically all we wanted to share with you as far as this report, and wanted to recommend to the commission to accept the report and have staff file it for our records. And we're available for any questions the commission might have.
I don't have a question, but just some comments there. I noticed that some of the cities have sphere of influence that's just huge in consideration to the actual city limits. And Newman is the one who really stands out as really what I would call excessive. Now this was, if I'm not mistaken, the Newman sphere of influence for urban living lines went to a vote in that a few years ago. I just wonder if the people in Newman realized what they were voting for. You know, I just have a real issue with these urban limit lines when they're just massive like that and without any consideration of farmland or even the need to do this. In my own personal opinion, I mean, it just that one in particular seems so out of place. But the spheres of influence are very large in some cities.
I have a question on the sphere of influence for Riverbank. Does that include the secondary sphere?
Secondary sphere, it's just the
I have a sphere of influence halfway between Oakdale and Coffee for primary, and then the secondary is from halfway from Oakdale to Coffee Road.
Yeah, so it's the whole.
That's the whole thing?
It's the whole
Okay.
thing, yeah. We didn't divide into the
No, that's fine.
primary.
I see what you mean.
Because that's where I get that large
Yeah.
increase of 1,400. But that's for future use,
Yeah.
I mean, way in the future.
Yeah.
Does this take into account, like, when you say the grazing grounds, as you start to get up into the hills, are less than desirable, but there's some really great soils, and with technology and the drip irrigation and everything, I think it's we've actually gained a lot of acres of ground over the last 20 years. Does it take into consideration some of that grazing ground as being really great ground, and with technology and the ability to get water to them?
So
Or no?
You'll see the Department of Conservation, their farmland maps, you'll see those shift over the years. So that slide you had, I think it was the last one with the whole county on it.
yeah, that one.
If you were to look at that even from, 5-10 years ago, that lighter green area, that's those orchards and things that you're seeing get
That's
added.
expanded
That's
over the years.
expanded area, yeah. If you look at
Right.
some of the older maps, those are probably all designated as grazing, but they slowly gain and change in designation based on the addition of irrigation
Yeah,
water.
like so for example, like when you go through Oakdale,
Yeah.
as you're getting up quite a ways now, there's some beautiful walnut orchards
Yeah.
up there, and that's all drip irrigation or micros or whatever. So that's probably starting to develop into more of a green over
Yeah.
time.
They do consider soil type too, though, so those may not ever, reach that prime designation, but they still kind of reach the, unique farmland or one of the other designations just based on the ability.
Development in irrigation systems has really led to the expansion of agriculture up into the hills.
Well, it has, John, yeah, I mean,
I would have never thought, years ago when I was in high school, that land was considered, near worthless, a grazing land. I never would have believed that trees would have grown on it.
I'd be curious to know what the plus or negative is on increased ag land because of the drip irrigation over the last 5-10 years. I bet it's increased quite a bit.
Well, you go up into Snelling and even where we live,
Yeah.
almost halfway up to the Grange, that's all
It's all
trees
developed
and
into orchards.
orchards and
yeah.
stuff now, grapes and stuff, so it's a huge amount.
Someone's developing grapes up there? What are they doing that for?
Well, up on Keys Road going up to all that, you know, it's like, I drove through there a while back and
I think it's
like
a Berryville
amazed.
Ranch.
Yeah, who would do that?
So I realize the importance of farmland, and the prime farmland must be preserved as it can, but the cities are being pressured in this county to build 22,000 homes, plus or minus, from 8 years ago that we haven't built. And with the new RENA numbers coming, it may be in the 30 to 40,000. How do we balance that? So when we come, we have to have a very good plan, and it's unfortunate that all the cities are right in the middle of prime farmland. So we either do away with the contiguous and go for jumping, where I can jump into bad or lesser quality farmland, but you're not going to allow that, or I go north of the river to San Joaquin, which is a possibility, which I don't want to do. Couldn't stand 2 boards of supervisors.
Don't tell San Joaquin that.
Well, we've already discussed it.
Oh, okay.
And to Richard's point, I mean, literally, all of Valley Ground is prime ag land. And the cities do have to grow, and there is pressure. And that's why I'm curious is, have we actually had a net gain of acres because of drip irrigation to where you can say, you know what, we're not losing ag ground because we're gaining it here, but we've got to continue to build our cities.
I think what we're going to have to be concerned about is right now we look like we've gained farmland, and we have up on the east side. But as soon as Sigma kicks in and these groundwater sustainability plans are in place, a lot of this land is not going to be farmable anymore, and we're going to be forced to have to fallow this land. So the gains that we've had are everything's going to change. The whole ball game's changing. Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, and the crops are limited too, what you grow there.
That's a good point, and I think, what Mr. Berryhill was talking about when the foothills, they got great almonds and grapes, but it's not like the land down here where we can grow. I grew a lot of different crops, and you look at what, say, the Ratto brothers are growing like that. You can't do that on the hills. Vegetable crops and peaches, a variety of crops that we grow out here are just not going to grow in those hills. But there are crops that do well there, I would admit. I would have never thought it was possible with the not only the irrigation systems and the rootstocks, and in particular, especially in grapes, but also in almonds. They will grow in places I never thought that they would, but are limited to just a few crops up there, just a half a dozen crops.
Definitely.
And it's not like the prime farm ground we did have in the bottom will grow. I think we have about 200 different types of crops that we can grow on the valley floor, and up in the hills maybe about 6. But it's worth noting. I mean, you can adapt certain crops to that kind of soil, but the very best is on the floor.
It's an interesting conversation, for sure.
Well, I know I'm right on that, because those hills, you're not going to be growing vegetable crops up there in those too. So.
Well, you have trouble harvesting them also with the mechanical harvesters getting around.
Yeah, even the almonds, they got to be careful up there in certain places.
Yeah.
And, you get runoff too if they leave the system on too long. But it can be done to a few crops. Then you get back to Commissioner O'Brien's remarks about the RENA numbers. Wouldn't I'm not sure of this, but wouldn't the areas of the spheres of influence around the cities be considered in areas where the housing could be put, since they're kind of partially in the cities already?
Yes, that's undertaken by your annual housing assessments that you submit for certification to the state, and they'll take a look at making sure that you have a balance between affordable housing for different groups to mid-size, but they want all housing numbers in. We intend on, I know most cities intend on doing their growth in that sphere of influence that they do have. During the annexation periods, they usually, when they annex, they should be developing shortly after annexation, and which I've noticed that some are not. I don't know if there's a stick with the carrot on that. There isn't.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, the RENA numbers, they state requirements from people who have no business sense who come up with these numbers, don't take in consideration of the sewer capacity of the city, or if there's enough water, or if, you know, you could really afford to grow like that. They just come up with these numbers. And I think that all we have to do is provide a place, okay, what can go there, but we're not required to build it. I mean, the developers will build it if they can sell it at a profit. I've had a meeting with several builders last year, and they said they can't sell the houses at a profit, so they're building elsewhere.
The state has a couple of bills in there, sir, that are requiring that housing be constructed or cities will be penalized. And that was through the SB1 funding, as well as restricting your use of Measure L money, even though it is local. But you have to meet certain building types, not building type, but communities types, as well as the level of housings that you have. So they're trying to put the screws to the cities, and we have to work with what they give us. The new RENA number comes out in 2022, and I'll be on the StanCog, where we balance the RENA numbers throughout.
Yeah,
I
I didn't think that they could restrict Measure L money for any reason.
No, they can not allow you to construct certain projects if it's not in the, what type is that? Was that sustainable community strategies?
I was going to say, I think you need to pick your poison. Cities are going to have to make some tough decisions because they're going to penalize for that, but then the penalty of having to build housing and the cost to try to provide services to that housing, you're going to have to weigh which is more important, I guess, or which you can afford, I guess. Houses are not a winning proposition for cities. The services have to, the fees generated from those houses aren't enough to cover the cost to provide services to those. So anyway, tough decisions again to be made.
Yeah, the cities rely on sales tax. The houses lose money. Every house loses money, especially the way the property tax is allocated. Almost all of it going to the state.
And county, but we also have a, it depends how you do your communities now. We have a community facility district, which any new housing will be paying for police, fire, roads, parks, and partial staff. So as we grow, they're going to have their pie. Right now is about $600 a year, which is, I'm sure Consolidated will catch up to that soon for providing the services, their fire district. But we have methods and tools that we can use to balance out what your deficiencies are. It's an interesting process.
Good report. We had a good discussion on this.
We've been locked up too long.
I like LAFCO, we discuss important issues, and this particular item had to have a lot of work went into it. It's really well done.
Yeah.
Good job.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
Way to go.
Any other comments on this item? Okay, this is a discussion item, and there is no vote for this. Okay, so Commissioner comments. Commissioner Bublock? You have any comments?
I do not.
Barry Hill, I
I
know
got
you.
nothing for you.
But I have comments on the Modesto's urban limit line, but I'm going to wait for Sarah's report on that. I found that quite irritating when I got that delivered to me. I didn't know that was coming. I just think that they have went completely outside the protocol and what the way things are done here to come up with a document like that. I'm really quite irritated with it. We will talk about that here later. Commissioner Withrow, do you have any comments?
Nope, I'm going to wait for Sarah to talk here.
Anybody else, you have any?
No, I don't at this time.
I have nothing.
Mr. O'Brien, no?
I already
Brad,
said.
we're waiting for your thoughts.
You can't think.
Okay, well, I'm the only one who had anything, comments then, but I am quite irritated at this urban limit line. Okay, matters, additional matters, I don't have anything additional. Yeah, Executive Officer's report, unless you're going to discuss your response. to
So I'll
the city of
just
Modesto.
note, because we do anticipate that the city's proposed urban limit line could lead to a future application. So we went ahead and wrote a response letter with that in mind, but also to inform the city about LAFCO's policies and about the planning process that we are expecting to see along with that in order to expand their sphere of influence, which we would presume that they would want to do. The City Council had it on their agenda last night, but they continued the item to July 7th, 2020. But they are also holding a workshop tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on the topic. That, of course, is not open to the public, but is able to be viewed online and on TV. So I'll be watching that and hopefully learning some more information about it. I do expect they will be continuing that item to July 7th for a decision, so I expect to see a staff report and hopefully some more information regarding it. I also anticipate providing an additional response letter to them at that point if we learn some more information that we can provide a meaningful response on. I will do so. Other than that, we have not, of course, received any response back from the letter yet, but if I do, I'll pass it along to the commission. And of course, you're aware too that we have been getting a lot of correspondence on it, so it's likely that we will go ahead and post on our website the copies of the letters so that everybody can see them without having to bounce back and forth from different agendas and things. Other than that, I did want to note we have some upcoming disruptions in our office based on a carpet replacement project in the building. What we're hoping to do is go ahead and cancel the July meeting. We don't have any public hearings scheduled for it. And then we will meet back again on August 26th. We're hoping that the carpet replacement does not disrupt us for more than about 10 days or so. So we should be back in business with no problem. But I wanted to give the commission a heads up on that. And that's all.
Okay, I just can comment on your letter. I thought it was pretty well written. But it actually shows in what you pointed out in the process there is of moving out urban limits, especially in areas that are outside of the sphere of influence, how ignorant the people from Modesto are to actually come up with something like this without even talking to LAFCO, without even knowing what was required. Yeah, we're not talking about the urban limits lines to a sphere of influence. It's actually going past that. And I was just really quite surprised by it. I thought your letter was quite good. I did have one question on, and you mentioned Mancini Park, which is over at Ceres, and that must have been, you must have been thinking of something else.
It's actually in the city limits of Modesto, oddly enough.
It's right on, that's not the park on,
River Road,
okay.
south of the river.
Yeah, so that's
their
still
city
city of
limit
Modesto, yeah.
bumps out right there.
Okay.
And just noted it because on a lot of maps, they tend to draw a line and kind of leave that out. So we don't want them to, inadvertently leave that out if that's already in their city limits.
Oh, okay. I was wondering why that was in there, because it was so far
It's an odd one.
away from where they wanted to propose. But you listing the government sections in there and what they need to do, it shows just either complete disregard for the LAFCO policy or ignorance of the process, or a combination of both. I'd like to point out to the commission, how Newman, although expanded their urban limit lines far beyond what I think is reasonable, they at least went to LAFCO and went through all the procedures and had a vote of the people that actually did everything right. They didn't just dump this out on us without talking to us. So, anyway, I'm sure we're going to have further discussions on this.
Yeah, I'm just going to add in there, Sarah, great letter, way to respond to show this is how it's supposed to be done as compared to what they've been doing up to this point, and the lack of kind of public participation in this process has been unbelievable. And anyway, I just think it was had to be said, for us to hear about this. I've been aware of it for a long time, but for it to come here now like this is just, it's embarrassing. And so anyway, I look forward to, as we move ahead with this and see how this goes forward and how the process is supposed to work, and what the disregard for the process is kind of discouraging at this point. So we'll see where this goes.
In their defense, I'm not defending them, but they did come to me and ask, they gave me the urban growth boundaries, whatever they called it, which was cutting into riverbanks, annexed areas, as well as jumping Clarabelle. And I said that was a non-starter, but I didn't realize this is how they went about it. All I knew is that this is a map. Would you approve it? I said no. So.
Hey, Sarah, then the LAFCO convention, is that still going on?
Brad wants
Oh, Brad, you have something to say? I've been waiting all night for you to...
I've been waiting all night to stand up and say something. I agree with what's been said. I know that when I was on the council, we were working to put in some urban limit lines in Modesto, and now we went through quite a process of talking to people. It didn't end up making it, and we weren't, I don't think we're expanding our sphere at the time, but that public engagement really, especially something like this that's affecting so many people, that's something that really has to be done, and you're going to win some and lose some, like what you're talking about, but I just hope that we as a city, I live in Modesto, that we take the time to engage the public and get the best, best information we can, so that we can do it in a way that's best for everybody. So.
Yeah, well, there is a proper procedure, and then there's what Modesto did. The Cal LAFCO convention, that's still going on?
So they still have it scheduled, but they were warning us that there may be some changes, so stay tuned.
What is that, in September or October?
I think was it October? Yeah. It's still a ways out, and they're still just keeping it as a tentative date.
Okay. Well, you'll let us know if there's any changes.
Yeah.
I do plan to attend that. The next meeting date is scheduled for August 26th. I will not be here on that date. I'm going to the Republican National Convention, now in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida. We moved it from North Carolina because the left-wing governor there was not going to allow us to have our convention, so we moved it into a free state. So I won't be here, so I'm sure you're all going to miss my words of wisdom here, but I don't really know, you're the vice chair?
Yeah, I thought.
Okay, well, I will not be here, so, only in spirit. No. It's very hard to become a delegate to the National Convention. I was able to do it, so I'm going no matter what happens. So. Okay, that is the end of our meeting tonight. This meeting stands adjourned.